Thanks for joining us today. I'm Laura Osmus. I am the president of the WIC New England chapter. We always love being at NECTA, especially in July. You can't beat it. Can't beat the weather. We want to thank Cox today for sponsoring our event, and of course, we want to thank all of our chapter sponsors: presenting sponsor ESPN, elite sponsor Comcast, and premier sponsors Nesson, Eris, and Navisite. We're excited today. We have Jessica Gelman, CEO of the Craft Analytics Group. The Craft Analytics Group was born from the Craft Sports Group, and Jessica helped build the team and the technology that transformed the business through analytics and continues to power the business side of the Craft Sports Group. Jessica is a 2014 Sports Business Journal 40 Under 40 recipient, and in 2012, she received the Sports Business Journal named her a game changer, which honors women who are leading and innovating in sports business. Jessica earned her MBA from Harvard Business School and was also honored as Harvard Female Athlete of the Year after leading Harvard to consecutive Ivy League titles and NCAA tournament appearances. Basketball, correct? Yep. Something that I am not familiar with in my short stature. She's an elected board member of the Harvard Alumni Association and co-founded the annual MIT Sloan Sports Analytics Conference. Joining Jessica today, we have Rachel Holt from Nesson. Rachel is a video host with Nesson and a graduate of Northeastern University. Jessica got her start at a CBS affiliate in Twin Falls, Idaho, where she was a weekend anchor and reporter. She found her way back to Boston, joining Nesson in March of 2016, and is overjoyed to be working with a fantastic team at Nesson. Please join me in welcoming Jessica and Rachel.
Hi, thanks everyone. Obviously very overjoyed to be back in Boston and not in Twin Falls, Idaho anymore. And I'm even more excited to talk to Jessica here today. I've actually talked with you before, but this is a nice forum to be able to do it in front of all of you. And we're actually going to open this up to questions from the audience in about 30 minutes, so be thinking of your questions throughout. So obviously we heard your very impressive titles: CEO of Craft Analytics Group, or CAGR, and then co-founder of MIT Sloan Sports Analytics Conference. But how would you describe what you do to people that aren't in that technical space and maybe don't even know what that means?
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for coming. You know, I think the big thing is today in business, we're trying to understand our customers better and leveraging technology and data to improve the customer experience. And that's basically what we do. It's what are your customers saying to you, both in their actions and feedback from them, and how do you use the data that you have as an asset to get a better understanding of your overall business. And you know, as Laura said to start, we spun out of the Craft Sports Group, which is the New England Patriots, New England Revolution, Gillette Stadium, and had been doing this type of work for about 15 years. And you know, had built some stuff in-house, much like many of the cable providers have done over the last few years as well. And we were getting so much interest in what we were doing. We were trying to you know, help kind of move the industry forward in terms of thinking about data and leveraging that customer information to improve the business.
And I'm sure people are seeing some bling on your right hand. I mean, we need to point this out. This is ring goals right here. The Super Bowl ring, of course, from last season, and we'll get into all of that and how you work with the Craft Group. But first, a little background on you. You played basketball at Harvard, so clearly have had an interest in sports throughout your life. But how did you get involved in analytics?
Also a great question. So I think the sports question first, I did play basketball, so love sports obviously. Grew up outside of Chicago going to sports events, a couple, not to the degree that I get to go to now, with my family, and always had awesome experiences, and they're some of my favorite memories. And so that was kind of why I was like, why sports? And then the analytics side was, I studied psychology in college, and at Harvard it was incredibly analytically oriented. Lots of Stata, Minitab. This is stuff from the early 90s, so new technologies today. And so kind of it was very much about people, and so now it's customers and a lot of deep dive on analytics, and so that was kind of how it started. And then I think it wasn't an intentional. The word analytics was not really a thing. In fact, Moneyball, which obviously is on the team side, many of you guys probably have seen the movie, hopefully read the book by Michael Lewis. So that came out, I think, in 2002 or 2003. So that's when I graduated from business school and when I started working for the Kraft family. And so I was kind of aware of that and was trying to think like, okay, this stuff is happening on the business side or on the team side. And this was before Facebook. Google was in its early days, and just starting to think about what can we do on the business side as well. So that was really how it started, and then it's really obviously taken off and been a huge focus. And the conference in the early days was just a few of us who were like-minded, and then it's kind of taken a whole new path, which I can talk about too.
Yeah, it'd be great if we could get into that first. I mean, of course, there's a couple different directions, and I have many questions for you, as I'm sure the audience does. But with that MIT Sloan Sports Analytics Conference, how did that come about, and what was your vision for that when you started out?
There wasn't really a vision. Do you guys know what this Sloan Conference is? It's the MIT Sloan Sports Analytics Conference is, we have about 3,500 to 4,000 people. It's the leading sports analytics conference, definitely in the US, potentially in the world. We do have people coming from India, Australia. ESPN's a presenting sponsor, and they have been for 7 or 8 years. And it's a 2-day affair. We have amazing speakers, everyone from Adam Silver to Rob Manfred to Mark Cuban. And that's we call that you're hearing about the leaders in the industry, and we have these panels that are running 3 at a time, but then there's all this really innovative stuff that's happening kind of outside of those panels. So there's research papers, there's people who are giving talks, we had an esports competition, there's drone racing. So it's really a fun experience. And the thing that I think is very unique about it is that it's actually the day-to-day of the operations is run by MIT Sloan students. And so that's really where it came from. Daryl Morey, who's the general manager of the Houston Rockets and really a leader in analytics on the team side, he and I had become friends. He was at the Celtics, and we were teaching a class at MIT Sloan, and he got the job in Houston. And so we said, okay, well, we like this give back that we're doing from an education perspective, and how can we continue to get kind of the future generation interested and engaged, but also continue to bring people who are thinking about it together. So in the first year, we had about 120 people at the conference. And then it's just and the first year was 1 day, not even, maybe a half day, and we had like 10 panels. So now to have close to 40 panels and all of these other things happening, it's really a great experience, and encourage people to come to it.
It's evolved quite a bit, and this year it's being held February 23rd and 24th at the Boston Convention Center.
That's right, thank you.
Make sure you mark that on your calendars and check that out. Now let's get into Kraft Analytics Group. First off, what is that?
So we're a technology and services provider, predominantly in the sports and entertainment industry. So obviously, client number one is the Kraft Sports Group, and that's who we started with. But we have now 8 other clients outside of our, football and soccer and Gillette Stadium and Patriot Place teams. So we're working in NBA and the NHL, and then we also are working with folks who touch the industry. So think ticketing, retail, media, and the big challenge, and it's been really interesting over the past year since we spun out, is how much data and how much confusion there is about what analytics is, and it's very flashy. People think analytics, but the heart of it is really you need to have good, clean data, and you need to go back to thinking about what your data can do for you. Your data, not necessarily what's happening out in the social media sphere. And I think that we have learned a tremendous amount how people just don't necessarily even know where to begin with that data. And then once they have the data, how to use it to move the business forward. So I'll give you an example, a Patriots example, because I think it helps people understand kind of where we came from and how we're helping people think about applying data. So in 2013, and this is a pretty specific example. We heard Coach Belichick say this phrase. You may have heard it. Do your job.
Just once or twice.
Yeah. So but it wasn't that in 2013. So we trademarked it. And just for clarity, we trademarked a couple of different things, but this was the one that really took on a life of its own. So we put it on a T-shirt, and so this was actually before we won the Super Bowl in 15, and it became our number one selling men's T-shirt. So we said, okay. When we put it on a women's T-shirt, it became our number one selling women's T-shirt. We put it on a hat. Brady, you guys all know Brady wears this winter hat, and we put it on the hat. I mean, we sold out of a ton of them in 2 days. And so we're going into the playoffs that year, and we're saying, okay, we're seeing that this is happening. We're looking at the data. We're finding this piece of information that's really resonating with our fans and our customers. And it always comes back to the customers and what they want, what they like, what they need. And we're changing our business and thinking and getting the right products to support that. So then we basically, through the playoffs, put a whole marketing campaign around Do Your Job, and then it became really what it is today, and the team won the Super Bowl. So it was great timing, for sure. But the thing is that that's continued, and I think people really think of Do Your Job as just, it's very connected to the team. But it really started with looking at what's selling. I mean, we have other great slogans, but that's the one that really connected. So one that for this year that we've heard and we think there's some good energy behind is No Days Off. So that's something that we're testing right now and seeing how that's going to do, and we're looking at the data to see what kind of legs that might have through this year.
You're obviously looking at a lot of data surrounding the team. Now, is there anything that was kind of surprising to you where through the use of analytics you were able to make some adjustments and do something to benefit the team?
Yeah, I mean, and again, I have examples from folks in the college space as well, but I'll stick with the Patriots because we're in New England, about an hour from the stadium, right? So this was something that's really interesting. So obviously, after the team wins the Super Bowl, and we're fortunate to go through it again this year, there is a huge increase in interest in the team and people wanting to kind of feel like they're part of the team. So I will say, if you guys, this one's actually pretty cool. This past year, after we won the Super Bowl, a learning that we had from 15 is that a lot of people had come down to the store the day after we won at 6 in the morning. And if you don't remember, which I'm sure you don't, it was a blizzard. And we were not open. In fact, many people were flying back still from Arizona. So this time, the learning from that is we tracked what was happening. We tracked the interest. We saw all of the social media posts asking why we weren't open. And so we did open this year, and there was actually quite a bit of coverage about it, but we had people waiting in line for over 2 hours, and it was below zero to get product celebrating the Super Bowl win. And so that's a good learning. Another interesting one is, again, this is kind of, a lot of times when you look at data, you might look at it only from one view of what is happening. So the example here is in 2015, we saw our retail sales kind of really shoot up. And at the same time, we saw interest in people joining our wait list also increase. So the wait list for us, it's a closed secondary market. And people who join the wait list will have the opportunity to purchase tickets to Patriots games when season ticket members post them. So we saw this kind of parallel growth happening. And then around September, retail kind of evened out, but we still saw the wait list going like kind of through the roof. And so again, if we were only viewing things from the view of ticketing, we'd say, oh, that's great. People are really interested. But because we're looking at both the data, and it wasn't just those, but all of the data across the organization, we said, okay, maybe there's something fishy here. So we looked into it, and it turned out that there was a broker ring that had basically been doing some illegal stuff to kind of get through our screens. And we're pretending to be actual customers, and they were not. And so we took, from an operational perspective, some steps to create better security. And we had good security, but working with Ticketmaster to improve that process for signing up. And the impact, again, from the customer perspective is now, it's not brokers who are getting those tickets. We really want our customers to be able to get those tickets when they're posted. So
very
just a couple examples.
And I have to say, I was at Gillette Stadium that day that you speak of, and that line was very long. There was plenty of Do Your Job merchandise being sold that day. If I am a season ticket holder, say I am, how are you using data to kind of track my interest in the team and see if I will renew for years to come?
Well, so we started doing this probably about 7 years ago. We take all of the data we have of a customer, and so it's everything from the game attendance to their email opens and clicks to are they calling in for customer service issues, and so on and so forth. And we take that information and we do a logistic regression to understand what are the behaviors that might indicate non-renewal. And then the key there for us is, okay, how do we alter if we see something that indicates non-renewal? So the simplest one, and we do many, but the simplest one is what we do when people miss games. So if you're a season ticket member, and for what we basically found is that when people get to a fourth missed game, their likelihood to renew drops by about 35%. So from our perspective, that means we need to prevent people from getting to that fourth missed game. And so the way that we have done that is through communication. So we have a series of triggered communications that go out. The first is after our first missed game, it's just very soft. Hey, here's all the things that it's not you missed this, but it's here's all the great things that happened at this past game. And the second missed game, we'll do a survey because we want to understand, did they miss the game because it was a night game, or they had a personal conflict, or did they have a bad experience and they're not going to come back anymore? And then the third missed game, we'll actually take an action that's non-email related and call them. So the impact of this was very significant. The people who we did these communications to versus the control that we held out renewed at 5% higher than those who we took no action against. So that's kind of putting analytics in action, and we have. So like just to think that was kind of what we did in year one, so you can imagine where we are in year 7.
Well, I want to ask you because this isn't a team that you would think would have issues getting people in the seats. Of course, they're coming off a Super Bowl winning season, and you've always given the Kraft Group a lot of credit in that way, that they do use analytics, and they are always finding ways to get people there and renew interest in the team.
Yeah, I think I feel very, very fortunate to work for the Kraft family, and they're very smart, as you might imagine, and also very entrepreneurial. And so I think that they were fans too themselves, right? They were season ticket members before, so it's always struck me about how conscious they are, not about just the bottom line, but really investing in the customer experience and engaging the customer. And I think that's why, despite the fact that we have consistently over the past decade, we've been very successful, our renewal rate has increased each year, but that the Krafts continue to make these investments not only in the communication, but in the stadium themselves, and obviously very smart at recognizing the broader opportunity for other folks in the sports industry to think like that, which is where we are with Kager and the Kraft Analytics Group. So.
Well, the fact that you did win a Super Bowl last year, does that change your approach going into this season at all?
Not really. I mean, I wish I could say that it does, but it doesn't. There's a bunch of great renovations that are happening in the stadium. The investments continue, and I think that it's just the nature of how the Krafts think as a business, and we have obviously been doing more on the analytics side to understand the customer and a couple years ago, we started this program called Patriots 365, which was trying to understand our customers not only when they're with us on game day or through our communications, but when they might be engaging with our key sponsors. So we have in this program, Patriots 365, we have Dunkin' Donuts, Uber, and Papa Gino's. And anytime a season ticket member makes a purchase through them, they're earning credit towards their season tickets. And so in this way, from just their day-to-day activities, they're, more associated with the Patriots, and then we're getting a better understanding of our customers outside of game day, and from our sponsors, they're getting to see the actual impact in a much more connected and deeper way.
Okay, and I've been distracted by that ring again since we're talking about the Super Bowl and the Patriots. That is heavy. You let me try that on earlier, and there is a lot of bling on that. How did that feel getting that?
It was amazing. If any of you guys saw the social media, the event was at Robert's house, and it was it's very special that the Crafts think to allow all the executives of the organization to come, and certainly made it very, very special. And I was able to bring my wife to the event as well. So we've been lucky to get to go to a few of these. So it's great, and this is actually the first time I've worn it since the ring ceremony. So it is heavy. I mostly just wear it. I can't type with it, but I mostly will only wear it when at games and or at a speaking event like this. It's not something I'm just like casually wearing around the house.
I would wear that all the time, so I give you a lot of credit. Now I'm going to put you on the spot. I don't know how much you can disclose, but do you have a favorite story that came out of that party? Because I saw the pictures on social media, and I really wanted to be there.
No, I mean, ooh, that's a tough one. No, I mean, honestly, it was great to spend time with my wife there, and she. Obviously, my role has changed a ton since we spun out the Craft Analytics Group, but it's great that we're still doing all of this stuff to help drive the strategy and thinking. But it's just special to be, how often do you actually get to take, one of the great things about sports is that I my family and friends get to experience my job. And so to be able to bring her to that experience, and that's really the best part, and getting to celebrate with all of my colleagues. I mean, you don't get to have that many special celebrations like that, so.
I imagine, well, it's nice to be rewarded for your hard work with the craft group, but you mentioned that's not everything you do. You work with college programs. Now, how does that differ from what you do from professional sports? That's a great question. The college space is probably several years behind in terms of the technology investment. There isn't the same staff and resources available at the collegiate level, so it's been really interesting to better understand that space in particular. I think it's a really exciting space, and in particular, some of the challenges that we're seeing overall in the sports industry and the cable industry. What I like about the college space is that we're really touching those millennials and getting to understand what they want and what they need. And so it's everything from they want to have these social experiences together. And so, how can we take and learn from that and apply it to their day-to-day? It was probably one of the more interesting learnings in talking with athletic departments. My mindset had always been, season ticket members, individual game buyers, and for the athletic departments, so much of their focus is the students and making sure the students come out to the game. And there's a lot of reasons for that. One, they want to have the right environment. But two, those are their future donors. So, so it's definitely a mind shift to understand that space, but I feel it's great in many ways where we were within what we were doing on the Craft Sports Group 10 or 15 years ago is where the college space is today. In some ways they're more advanced, but because of technology and analytics, some of those challenges in the early days where we were really knee deep in Excel,
we can use technology to allow greater economies of scale more quickly. So where we might have needed to have, 5 or 6 analysts, now you can have one because you have the technology to make people more effective.
You mentioned that word challenges. Now, not lost on us is the fact that you are a woman in such a male-dominated space here. What are some challenges that go along with that?
Well, it's also a great question, and it's been very interesting, now kind of being at the forefront of running a business. Well, first and foremost, again, the crafts are very forward-thinking in this space. So someone said to me, did you think about being a woman CEO and running a technology and analytics company? And to be honest, I didn't think about it because that's the environment. There's a lot of other, across the craft group, not just the sports group, there's a lot of executive women. So, but it's been an interesting learning. I think as we've been scaling over the past year and hiring folks, hearing how many women with a technology and analytics background, how they're interested in coming to work at Kager because we are a female-run company. That's been really surprising, and actually more than 50% of our staff, and more than half of our staff is on the engineering side, are women. And so I think that's kind of recognizing, of course, there are less women in the room and all of that across the board, but that's been very interesting. But from my perspective, I've always thought it was opportunity. So even in the early days with the sports group, I have leveraged the knowledge I have of the customers through data to help inform and move us forward. And it wasn't like, hey, here's this opinion that I have. This is what the data is telling us. This is what the customers are saying. So I think it's, how can you use information to your advantage and make it so your voice is as strong as someone who maybe speaks louder or whatever it might be.
Well, the use of analytics is not something new, but
Right.
with the use of technology, as you were mentioning, how do you see that changing moving forward?
I mean, I think that the biggest challenge today, just generally, is in the past 2 years, there's been more data created than in the last 100. So keeping up with that pace of new data that's coming available is number one from a technology perspective. Number two is making sure you're getting the right data. There's a lot of wrong data out there. And how do you find and make sure you're collecting the right information? And sometimes, by the way, you have to change your inputs of data in order to get the right information. I don't think people necessarily understand that. So that's kind of two very big things. The third is just general curiosity. People often say well, how did you have a feel that analytics was gonna be the way? I mean, it wasn't that I had a feel. It was just natural curiosity and trying to see what we could do differently and how we could think differently. So,
obviously, you're a leader for many people in this field, and the Patriots, a lot of people, other teams look at what they're doing and go off of that. But is there any team that you look at or any person in particular that kind of motivates you throughout and you use as your model?
I wouldn't. So I tend to look outside of the sports space in terms of other organizations. So I mean, obviously, you're looking at Amazons of the world. I think what they are doing is amazing, and they're very advanced. So that's kind of. I look at Major League Baseball Advanced Media and what they've done, and I'm really impressed by what they're doing. I think what ESPN has done with the creation of the Stats and Information Group is great. But if I'm gonna take a step back from that and just think about people who are inspiring to me, I'll kind of go with 3 directions there. The first is I feel very fortunate that I come from a long line of, I think, pretty strong women. My grandmother is turning 100 this year.
Wow.
And she was employee 18 at NASA. And she worked, now I'm joking, she was a hidden figure, but she actually was, she was an executive admin for the president of NASA, and that was actually the only opportunity that she had. And so I look at her, my mom was a chemist and has several patents, and you know, I remember when I graduated from business school, my grandmother, you know, said, because of course women couldn't go to HBS or, you know, Harvard for that matter when she was growing up. She's like, I never thought that I would see, you know, a woman, let alone my granddaughter, graduate. Now I'm gonna get all like, so that was obviously very meaningful. And so that's kind of number one. I feel like very fortunate in that regard. Number two, I've had amazing mentors, and probably one of the most important to me was my college basketball coach, Kathy Delaney Smith, who is still the basketball coach at Harvard. But I think like about the fact that she hyphenated her name in like the 70s. But she just built a great culture with the program that I went through for 4 years, and all of the other women who have gone through the program are really impressive, and they're all great friends of mine. And so that will be the second. And then the third is obviously the crafts. They are just so innovative, and being able to learn from them over the past 16 years and continuing to learn from them is, you know, it's pretty amazing and incredible.
Well, quite the impressive work that you're doing.
Thanks.
I know I've got a chance to ask my questions, so we'll open it up to the audience. And I imagine one of the most prevalent questions you get is, can I get tickets to the Patriots game? So we'll just say off the bat that no,
Right, no.
You probably don't give those away.
A lucky person might be able to wear the ring today. I did bring a couple of things. You do? Yeah. I'm not going to select who had the best questions. I brought a couple of Patriots things for good questions. So.
Okay, does anyone have a question?
Maybe not so much a question, more of a curious statement that you made. How much time goes into trying to maintain those current customers that may have missed a game, knowing that the wait list is so big and that you would have so many people anxious to take their spot? So,
I mean, I think people are surprised by that, but yes, it's the big focus. I mean, I think most people, anyone who does marketing kind of knows that it costs less to retain a customer than to acquire a new one. And so we actually look really closely from a data perspective at tenure, and we get most concerned heading into a renewal cycle if we're seeing people who are more tenured who are less likely to renew. And that will actually be the group that we target first and foremost. So we want to reward the people. I mean, I think this is the overall philosophy, but I think in general in business and in managing your customers, it's a good philosophy, which is you want to reward your most loyal customers. And that's not necessarily, and this is what I think is very creative about what the crafts do, it's not just about how much they're spending. That tenure is really important. And people ask, like, is the wait list, is it really based on when you joined? And the answer is yes. Like, that is the sole criteria. When did you join the wait list? And that's when people come off.
Hello. I have a question about age. I know I've read that a lot of young people are not participating in viewing sports in the same way that sort of my age and older people are. What are you seeing in the data, and how are you looking at that?
Yeah, it's a great question, and we look at not only are people viewing, but how are they viewing. So, again, all of you in this room will have much more perspective. We're looking at a lot of the data that you guys provide, but I think the most interesting thing has been the shift to mobile view from desktop view. So to be honest, the data is not where it needs to be. And I think you had asked earlier what's going to be one of the biggest challenges. It's going to be whose data is it and how is it shared. So, Amazon being a good example, they're getting a tremendous amount of information, and how is that going to be shared back to organizations? They're in terms of helping to better market to those customers. So, I think the millennials they're a great group. They're unique and different for sure, but that's one of the biggest challenges. I think that they're looking to view stuff more in snippets, and I think the way that stuff is produced is going to change. You may or may not have heard, but many of the leagues are making changes for pace of game. So I think that in Major League Baseball, I saw something yesterday that the amount of time that they're in the batter's box they're going to have like effectively like a shot clock that they need to get out of the batter's box. So I think that will be part of the way that things are going. The other big change will be this ongoing gamification. And so many things that people see in daily fantasy, that's obviously that part of the business, but I would see many organizations looking to do more things that are engaging people either on a second screen or in stadium. People are competitive, and they want to be able to guess, which side of the field is Brady going to throw the ball, or what's the next play. And I think that's going to be where real changes are going to be made to engage that younger generation.
Hi. Curiosity, it's great to see that analytics and statistics are part of that winning combination for the Patriots. This is a spin-off, right? You said
Right.
the group.
Yeah, we're separate.
Yeah, so does that open door for you to look at other competitors in the football field? And are other teams now looking at the statistics to help them? Not that we want them to win, we don't. But, what does that opportunity open there as far as across the industry, the NFL industry and other
Sure.
sports?
I mean, in the business world, so you're talking about the team side, but in the business world, there is not an issue. I would say the bigger issue is more geographically based than, so there isn't, actually, I mean, if we're looking at it from a broad NFL perspective, if that's a specific question, for the owners, if one of the teams that maybe hasn't been achieving the same revenue numbers because of the shared nature of the business, if the other teams start improving, it's good for everyone. So it's actually counter to what you might think.
Hi.
Hello.
Good morning. So my question is more based on sort of how you gain new clients with this spin-off.
Yep.
Again, just picking off of that, you have a broader base, assuming you want to build the client base to, keep the doors open and so on and so forth. How are you using data to find new clients? And when you find clients that you feel like could benefit from analytics, how do you overcome the sort of old school way of thinking around that?
I mean, it's a great question, and I'll start by saying one of the benefits of the Kraft Analytics Group is that we are associated with the Kraft family. So, we have had a lot of incoming interest, and that's actually, I mean, we're scaling to meet that interest and demand. So, we're not specifically even at a point where we're going out and doing sales at this point in time, which is great for us. But I think that we are very much looking at our sales process, length of time, how long, how many conversations, how much educating and understanding do we have to have in order to understand the challenges that our customers are facing, and really trying to find the consistencies across them. So we actually had intended to do the technology platform and then services around the platform itself. But as I said earlier, what we identified is that in some cases, people may have made an investment in a data warehouse and a data visualization and an analytics component, and they're either, or they haven't, but if they have, they don't know what the next step is that they need to take. And so we actually, because that was stuff that we evaluated for ourselves both. I mean, we've at this point had gone through to get to build our own technology, 5 different iterations of vendors, and then just there wasn't anything out there for what we needed. So we said we're going to build it, and then we can build something that's specific to the industry. But we created a consulting arm because we are needing to help people in that initial, I guess we'd call it discovery, of what it is that they actually need to do with their technology, but then also helping people think about, okay, once you have this technology, what are you going to do with it? And that's the other part that's been interesting, is that people have really been reaching out to us and engaging us to say, we have now invested in a platform, we don't know what to do with it. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge of technology across the board, which is how do you actually actualize and have the impact of it? So helping people think through org structure, what are the appropriate hiring, data governance is a huge part of what we're doing. So, you know, like I kind of said, what we're actually doing is helping people build a data-driven organization. And it can be a technology, but it also can be just like, okay, we're here, we don't know where to go.
Hi. If you could go back to the younger you, when you first started out in your career, what's some of the advice that you would give yourself?
Oh my goodness. Gosh, that's a good one. Sorry, I had not really thought about that. I mean, I think I would just say that I look at where I am today, and I would not have said that this is the path I would have gone down. Not for any particular reason, but just that I don't know if you can read the tea leaves, and wouldn't have known that analytics was going to be what it is, nor did I know that the year I graduated from HBS, Gillette Stadium was going to be opening and the Patriots were going to win the Super Bowl. So I think the biggest advice would be just relax. Don't stress. Be curious. Always educate. Always try and educate yourself. So I think people are pretty consistent in who they are. So just for perspective, no one in my family played basketball. So I taught myself how to play basketball. And that was, you know, I grew up in Chicago watching Michael Jordan play and going to local college games and being a real student of the game. And that's kind of been consistent at, you know, in the early days with the Kraft family. You know, it was early days. There weren't that many people working at the organization. There wasn't like, hey, here's this training program. It was, you know, how do you self-educate and how do you think about the business? And, you know, in some cases, Sloan was just a great learning opportunity for me too, the starting up and running of Sloan. And I think that this is going to be one of the biggest challenges for the younger generation, is that I think young folks are waiting to be told what to do, and it's really about, you know, how can you make change and how can you move things forward, and not waiting to be told what to do. And I think that's going to be, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens over the next 10 years. I'm trying to, like, in the way that I can from a cultural perspective, move the young folks in our organization to think like that.
Hi, Jessica. First of all, thanks for enlightening us today on business analytics. My question is, I have a daughter who's actually majoring in analytics.
Great.
And she's a rising senior. So my question
We're hiring.
Great. But my question is, what advice do you have? Because I'm still learning about analytics and stuff like that for the younger people. I mean, what do you see as a good path for them, and what might you suggest to help her out?
I mean, the first thing is, people think, I remember asking this question when I was applying for jobs coming out of college, because it was this concept of analytics, or what is analytics, was there. It's not as complicated as people think. It's about, there's all different types of analytics, and just understand that what you're trying to do is understand either your business or customers, and using data to do that. For anyone graduating right now, I would highly encourage to learn R. I'd also highly encourage to understand data visualization. Probably the biggest challenge in anything that you do, and all of you guys are communicators, is how do you present your thoughts, and how do you help people understand your view of the world? And that's, you know, kind of how I have leveraged data, and the data visualization tools today are really helpful. But I think having, so many times people will do this piece of analysis, but they won't actually take a step back and say, what does this actually mean, and how can you apply it? So that would be learn those skills. And then, I would say talk to people in the industry, understand, and it doesn't need to be at the, the person who's running the company. Talk to the junior people, understand what their actual day-to-day work is, and find which one of those things is interesting to you. And obviously attend the MIT Sloan Sports Analytics Conference.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jessica and Rachel. Very insightful. Just want to remind you, our next full WIC event is in October, and our signature event, Evening of Excellence, is here in the Boston area, November 9th at the Intercontinental. Go to our website, www.wicnewengland.org, for more information and to nominate. Thank you, everyone.